This is Steve with Rocky Mountain ATV EMC, and today I'm going to show you how to replace the clutch on a Yamaha Banshee. No matter what type of riding you do, your clutch will eventually wear out. Now if you're having issues with your clutch, such as a surge or grabby feel, or even clutch slippage at high RPMs, you definitely want to inspect it. Now Yamaha recommends inspecting and adjusting your clutch every 6 months and replacing it if necessary. So today I'm going to show you how to do that on this 1993 Yamaha Banshee YFZ 350. Now the procedures that I'm going to show you will work on all Yamaha Banshees ranging from 87 to 2006, but you need to check with your OEM service manual to be sure. To do this job you need some basic hand tools, a torque wrench, an oil pan, caliper, gloves, rags, and safety glasses, and a copy of your OEM service manual for more information, proper procedures, and specs. You will also need some engine oil and coolant. Today we are using the Tusk Competition Clutch Kit and gasket, and you can pick up all of these on our website. The first thing we need to do is drain the transmission oil and coolant from our machine. To do that, we'll pull the transmission drain bolt and let it drain. Now let's install the drain plug and torque it to 14 foot-pounds. Then we'll remove the front radiator cowling and remove the radiator cap. Now the next thing we need to do from there is remove 2 drain bolts, one on each side of our cylinder, followed by the water pump radiator hose. Next, we're going to back off our clutch free play. Now let's remove the vent hose, kickstart lever, brake pedal, and foot peg. Now that we've got those off, we need to remove the cover. Now on Yamaha Banshees, they use a number 3 Phillips screw to hold the cover on, and there always seem to be a bear to get off. So you definitely need to use a number 3 screwdriver, but I would go straight to the Tusk Impact to get them off first. Now we're going to break all these screws loose using our Tusk Impact a quarter turn at a time in a crisscross pattern. Now we can remove the cover. Now while removing the cover, just take your time and wiggle it off. Don't forget the dowel pin. Once you've got it off, we'll remove the old gasket. Now that we have the cover, the dowel pin, and the gasket removed, there's one last thing. Now this is a coolant line that runs up to the cylinder head, and it has an O-ring on it. Now you can reuse O-rings, but it's always safer and they're inexpensive to just go ahead and replace it. So we're going to remove the one on this one and go ahead and replace it. Now before we remove our clutch pack, there's a few things I want to point out. Now because we've backed off our free play adjustment on the clutch lever, this is the other adjuster for our cable free play. Now it's supposed to be loose like this as the clutch pack is completely compressed. Now if that were to be tight, you could be getting some slippage issues because of that. And so to remove the clutch pack and everything, we'll go ahead and loosen this up and back it off a little bit. And when we do our reinstall, we'll readjust that to where it's supposed to be. Now the other thing I want to point out is on the faceplate there's arrows, and so when you take the clutch apart, just make sure to pay attention to that stuff so that when you it'll make reassembly much easier. First, let's break our lock nut loose. Now let's remove the pressure plate bolts and springs. We'll do that breaking them loose in a quarter turn each in a crisscross pattern. Now let's remove the pressure plate and clutch pack. Now while you're doing this, be mindful that the stock OEM clutch has these rubber cushions between every fiber plate as you're pulling them out. So just keep track of all those. Now the last thing we want to pull out is the ball and push rod, And the reason we want to do that is just so that we can inspect those while we're at this point. Now, obviously the ball not much can happen to these. The push rod themselves on the ends can wear down. I mean, this machine doesn't have that much time on it, so I didn't expect it to be very bad at all. And it's in really good shape. So we can go ahead and reinstall those. But the other things that you want to look for with your inspection are the inner hub and the outer basket for grooving from the plates. Now, what happens over time is the plates will wear grooves into the basket more so than the hub, which will cause a really difficult clutch pull and a clutch that chatters or doesn't want to engage properly. Now, if that gets bad enough, you definitely need to go ahead and replace the clutch basket. The inner will wear. Usually it's not as bad as the outer, but it may need to be replaced too if the grooving gets severe. Now, when you're inspecting the clutch pack, obviously the rubber cushions, you want to look for tears or if they're broken. These are pretty easy to inspect, and just go ahead and replace those if there's a problem with them. Now, as far as the steel plates and the fiber plates, the steel plates, what you want to look for is any discoloration. You can go ahead and measure the thickness of the steel plate as well, but you want to do that in a couple of different areas, and what you're looking for there is consistency with all of your measurements, and then double check your OEM service manual for that spec as well. The fiber plates, on the other hand, they will have a thickness spec that you can check with your caliper. Do it again in a couple of different areas and check your service manual, but you'll also want to look for circular grooving in the fibers, and that would obviously coincide with the steel plates as well. So if you see anything like that, just go ahead and replace them. This clutch is actually in pretty good shape, but for our video, we're going to go ahead and replace it anyway for you guys. And one final note on the steel plates, you want to check for warpage. Now, you'd obviously want to stick your steel plate on a very flat surface and use a feeler gauge, and you'd slide that underneath the plate and do it in a couple areas so that you can check for consistency. And there is a spec in your owner's manual with that as well. So that's the last thing that you need to inspect with your clutch plates. Now, we went ahead and soaked our clutch plates in oil overnight so that we could do this install today. Now, the clutch pack on these are a little bit different than your typical clutch pack. We'll start off installing a fiber and a rubber cushion, and then we will install our first steel plate. Now, on the steel plates, one of the steel plates will have a flat spot on the hump, and then all the rest will have just a normal hump. Now, all the plates will have a narrowing in the plate, and what we need to do is install the steel plate with the flat spot. That's the first one that we'll put in, and then as we alternate between fiber plates and steel plates, we need to rotate the steel plate 60 degrees from the previous one in a clockwise direction as we install the whole pack. Now, the other thing I want to point out is on the steel plates, if you feel the outer edge, one corner of the edge will be round and the other edge will be sharp. Now, you need to make sure that they're all facing the same way, meaning all the round edges are facing out or in. It's possible that some aftermarket kits may require you to leave out the cushion or judder spring, but you should always refer to your specific instructions or manufacturer's specifications. Now, we started right there, so let's rotate it. Pretty much if you follow these, that's 60 degrees. So the first one was right there, next one will go right there. Now that we've got those installed, we need to install the pressure plate. Now, on the inner basket, there's an arrow that you need to line up with one of the arrows on the pressure plate. Now, with the clutch springs, you want to measure the overall free length and then check in your service manual for the spec on that. Now, our clutch kit has springs in the kit, so we're going to go ahead and use those for this install. Now, we want to tighten these down incrementally, so just screw it in a few turns, move to the next one and do this in a crisscross pattern. Then once we get them all down tight, we want to torque them to 7.2 foot-pounds. Now that we have all these torque, we need to go ahead and make our clutch adjustment. To do that, you want to push on the cam arm that forces the push rod out to the pressure plate. And we need to screw that in, and now there's an arrow on the engine case and an arrow on the arm, and we need to align those and then go ahead and lock our lock nut. Now that we have that snug, we need to torque it to 5.8 foot-pounds. Now we're ready to install the clutch cover. First, let's take some contact cleaner and a rag and just clean off this mating surface where the gasket goes. Now let's install our dowel pin and our gasket. Next, we'll install the cover. Now we need to torque our clutch cover screws to 5.1 foot-pounds in a crisscross pattern. Next, let's install the breather and coolant hose and kickstart lever. That bolt we need to torque to 18 foot-pounds. Next, we'll reinstall the brake pedal and the foot peg. Now that we got those on, we need to reinstall our cylinder drain plugs, add coolant and oil. Now don't forget to top off your overflow coolant bottle. Now we need to readjust our clutch. We need about 10 to 15 millimeters of free play. Now the last thing we need to do is just fire it up and test it out. And that's all there is to it. Come check us out at RockyMountainATVMC.com for more parts, apparel, and accessories. And remember, all orders over $75 ship for free. And make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. This is Steve. We'll catch you next time.